Hello, 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 and good evening. Welcome to this evening show of Three Drams. No matter where you are in the world, we'll say Benvenuto, Dobro Prajalavat, Vitam, whatever language you speak, whatever part of the world you're in, we are delighted to have you here with Three Drams. As always, I am your host, Matt Healy, and I am here by the graces of the fantastic O'Donovan brothers who run Irish Malts and, of course, Three Drams, the reason we are all here, the premier Irish whiskey subscription club that brings all of the best and newest whiskies right to your door. As always, I am joining you from my little household studio here in Dublin, but let us know in the comments section where you are joining us from, because I'm already seeing people coming in from Sweden, 2 different people from Germany. We've got West Cork, we've got Donnybrook, all the way in West Kerry and Schneem. We have people from all over the world. And Three Drams is one of the largest subscription services for whiskies in the world. And of course, it's all focused on Irish whiskey. So the O'Donovan brothers who run Irish Malts and Three Drams are the ones behind it. As always, I am simply your host to introduce you to some of the coolest and most interesting whiskies in the Irish scene. Some are new, some are very well established, but I'm going to bring you some of the best stories, brand ambassadors, makers, producers, and owners of these companies here. And of course, this is your opportunity to be able to ask all of these people the questions that you're wondering about the products that we're going to be tasting. This evening, we are tasting 3 very interesting and very, I suppose, differentiated and unique whiskies. We've got, of course, up first, Jim Mac whiskey, which is a whiskey with a fantastic hurling pedigree. Then we've got Teeling 13-year-old single grain, which is a whiskey that I think a lot of us have been looking forward to as well. And then we have a sneak peek, a world's first premiere of the Micil small batch blended Irish whiskey, which I am incredibly delighted to be able to showcase here on the show this evening. We have Pádraic, who is our third guest this evening from Micil, from the distillery, coming into the comment section, which is fantastic. We have Mike D, a good watcher, coming from Youghal as well. Up in Dublin, we have Andrew watching in Leopardstown as well. We have Sandyford, and of course, Gary coming in from a fantastic California, which I'm sure has lovely weather this time of year. As you're watching along tonight, guys, don't forget, if you have the 3 Drams subscription kit, it'll look a little like this if you're lucky enough to have your 12-month subscription to get this fantastic plinth. We will be tasting samples 1 through 3 this evening. And then don't forget that in your inbox at the end of the show, you will get discount codes for 2 of the 3 whiskeys we have tonight, both individually and also as a bundle deal together. The bundle deal, of course, is a new addition to 3 Drams from the O'Donovan brothers and Irish Malts, which gives you an additional discount if you buy the 2 whiskeys that are available together in one package. Of course, for anyone that's out there enjoying 3 Drams, loving this experience, once a month being able to sit down with Irish whiskey enthusiasts from across the world and meet the makers and taste some of the most fantastic whiskeys, don't forget that this Christmas, the guys in 3 Drams do have a fantastic gifting service that you're able to gift the wonders of 3 Drams to your friends, family members, or the whiskey lovers in your life. So we're seeing, of course, there's always a great contingent coming in from Glanmire, so I'm glad to see that Gordon's here joining us. We've got Roisin coming in from Stillorgan, so not too far away from me. You've got about 3 other people coming in from Glanmire. We've got Youghal, we've got Sandyford, so we've got a fantastic contingent tonight, guys. And of course, we've got Robert down in Middleton. So I am delighted that we have so many people joining us already. Don't forget that if you are going to post on the social medias, do use the hashtag 3Drams. And this is a fantastic way to not only spread the love of Irish whiskey around the world, but it's also a fantastic way that we can find you after the show, or the O'Donovan brothers who are behind the scenes right now find you during the show. If you're on Instagram or Twitter, make sure you I suppose use the @ symbol for 3 Drams, Irish Malts, or Potstill _ from myself if you want to tag any of us in the show. But I know we're not here to listen to me, in fairness. So if you have any questions as we go on throughout the show, you know this is exactly where you can ask them. But it's time for me to introduce our first guest this evening, because I said, we're not here to listen to me talk. We're here to taste some fantastic whiskeys and meet some of the producers. Now, this is a whiskey I have been dying to try for ages. I am absolutely delighted that we're about to be joined by John O'Brien from Jim Mack Whiskey. So, Mr. John O'Brien, I want to say a very big welcome to you to the show. And here you are. Welcome to your first Three Drams experience. How are you doing?
Nice to meet you. Are you well?
All well here. Where in the world are you joining us from, John?
I'm actually based. I was actually laughing there when some of the people were so close to me. I'm based in Stillorgan. Obviously, I'm a Tipperary man, and the brand is a Tipperary brand, but I'm based and living in Stillorgan at the moment. So very close to a few of the guys in Sandyford and Leopardstown that were joined in. So look, delighted to be here, Matt. I'm a big fan of what the guys in Irish Malts are doing, and Three Drams is a great vehicle for us to get our whiskey out there. So I'm delighted to be part of it.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that, and it's great to hear you have so many whiskey supporters surrounding you. So what I'm going to do is, because one of my cardinal rules of a whiskey tasting is we need to have whiskey in the glass from the offset. You can,
for sure.
You can talk as long as you want, but you don't
we're ready to go.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take dram number one here, number one. I'm going to peel it off, and I'm going to ask you, John, who in the world are you, and who is Jim Mack for those that don't know?
Yeah. Well, Matt, I suppose the person behind the brand, Jim Mack, the legendary character it is Jim Mack, my uncle. We wanted to bring out a whiskey that would honour the values that he had. We're from Tipperary. Jim has a pub in Tipperary. Unfortunately, Jim passed away in 2019, but he got to taste the whiskey, which was great. He was very happy with the whiskey that we're going to bring out. In the drinks industry, I suppose, for years, the family have the pub there in Griallais, which is in Inverin. It's at the foot of Devil's Bit Mountain, which people might know. It's a beautiful, picturesque area. Jim had the pub. The pub is in the family since 1887. Now, back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, they bottled their own whiskey. So there's a tradition that went back as far as the early or late 1800s. Jim himself then, obviously in the 60s, created a spirit that wasn't legal to sell, but was consumed by an awful lot of friends and family.
Well, I wouldn't know anything about that now, John.
Yeah, no, of course, man. And I hope there's no excise officers online tonight. But so Jim was a warrior on the sports field, and that was one of the reasons we wanted to use him as our brand character. Obviously, he was a passionate whiskey guy, but on the sports field, he was a warrior. Off the field, he was a gentleman. He took no bull. He was a farmer, a builder, and a publican. And in that trade, as a publican, you can't take any bull from people. But at the same time, he was very good to people. He was very much a community man. He was like the chief of the tribe, helped out everyone he could. So, there's a strong connection there to the drinks industry. As I said, we went with the comic book style. As you can see behind me here, we wanted to create a character that people can connect to. And we wanted to use the comic book style so we can tell that story of Jim Mack, and also tell the story of the origins of maybe the game of hurling, which was a massive part of Jim's life, a massive part of my life. I was lucky to be inspired by Jim to play hurling. Went on to play with Tipperary for 14 years along with my brother, and lucky enough to win 2 All-Ireland medals. We lost 3 All-Irelands, but lucky enough to win 2. Jim's son actually as well played with Tipperary minors back in the 80s as well. So there's a strong tradition there. We wanted to marry the 2 passions that Jim had. Whiskey was one massive passion, and then also the GEA. So it hadn't been done before, Matt. It was something, the story is very authentic, and we wanted to bring that to the fore. And we think that it resonates with people. A lot of people have played GEA throughout their lives, but even if they haven't, they know the sport is very authentic Irish. And we're looking forward to telling that story to people outside of Ireland, in Europe, and further fields in North America.
And I suppose, what was the creation? I'm having a little nose here. I don't want to take a sip before we cheers too much. But perhaps I'll ask this question. Perhaps we can have a little cheers, and I'll invite people to have a sip with us, and then tell us in the comments what they're tasting, what they're experiencing. I'm going to ask you first, and then I'm going to cheers you. But I suppose what was your creation route, or your inspiration that led to this blend by itself? And that's the question itself. I'm going to cheers you. I'm going to have a little sip. I'll say sláinte, and then I'm going to listen to your answer once I've had a little sip now.
Yeah, well, Matt, I suppose about 5 years ago was when I started to get into whiskey, and I really, I suppose, back when we were all a bit younger, maybe we might have had bad experiences with Irish whiskey back in years and years ago, and that's changed now. There's so many great whiskies out, so we wanted to bring out a whiskey that was very approachable. We've gone down a more traditional route. It's a 75% grain, ex-bourbon barreled for 4 years. But we have a little twist then with the 25% malt is Oloroso sherry, exclusively matured in Oloroso sherry for 4 years. So we wanted something that was very approachable, very easy on the nose, that when people get the nose to it, they really want to be invited into tasting it. And I suppose, look, approachable is the word that a lot of people use, but that's what we wanted. We wanted people to taste it, that they come back for more. We wanted something also then for not just the new whiskey drinker, which we think that the category is welcoming a lot of new whiskey drinkers, and also the brand we have with the visuals might lead people to be more inclined to look at the brand and say, right, it's something different, we might give this a try. So we wanted someone that was interested in taking a sip, but also we wanted a dedicated whiskey drinker, which I'm sure there's a lot on here tonight, that they'd be actually really intrigued by what we've done as well. And we collaborated with an award-winning distillery in Cork. I remember listening to Jack O'Shea here a few months ago. It was very interesting. And Jack spoke about, with Sailor's Home, about not going down the route of raising the money for a distillery. Because as Jack spoke about, the money that's needed for a distillery is astronomical. So straight out the gate, I wouldn't have had huge experience in the industry. So to raise that kind of capital wasn't going to be feasible. So I wanted to go down the route of bringing out the whiskey first, get a bit of credibility in the industry for the whiskey we brought out, get the brand out there, get a bit of traction. And we're in the process now of going on our first fundraiser, which is going well so far. So yeah, that was more or less the reasons behind it. The values and the values of Jim Mack and the character were the things we want to get across in the brand. And with the whiskey itself, we feel we've done something really nice that the dedicated whiskey drinker will be interested in having as well.
This is delicious. I've tasted innumerable sourced whiskies in Ireland. I've tasted the component barrels of most whiskies. If anyone knows it, the day job, I source a lot of whiskies and work with a lot of whiskies in different castes and whatnot. And this is a fantastic combination of flavors. So you're saying 75% malt, 75% grain in bourbon, and 25% in sherry, which is
sherry. First fill Oloroso sherry for 4 years. Yeah, exactly. We think that gives it a bit more of an extra mouthfeel with the malt in the Oloroso sherry. The fact it's first fill as well, it gives it a good color, and you get the full impact of the 25% malt, even though it's still big, 25% malt fraction, but I think we get a good kick out of it because of the first fill.
Absolutely, very well rounded, not astringent. There's none of that alcohol bite. You're into a very as Vlad just said here, a very lovely blend.
Yeah.
So that's it's a fantastic profile for this whiskey. As I said, I mentioned just as we were introducing you, a whiskey I was excited to try and have yet to try. So this is you're experiencing my first taste as I'm experiencing.
Great to hear, Matt. Yeah, great to hear. Like on the nose, I remember listening to Jack O'Shea as well when he was saying about, not wanting to tell people what they should taste. But I agree with him, because sometimes you actually can put people off. But at the same time, we feel we get some real rich vanilla sherry aromas, obviously from the sherry cask, a bit of caramel there on the nose, and then on the palate, you get spiced fruits, real Christmas cake kind of taste to it. And people are mentioning chocolate there, which is good to hear, because it's one of my passions, is chocolate as well, and I definitely get the chocolate off it, which is good. So
you had decided on a theme, you decided on a brand, you knew you wanted to create a whiskey. As a whiskey enthusiast, what was that voyage of discovery? Because you don't walk into a distillery and distilleries just give you a blend. That's not how the world works. You go in and it's a voyage of discovery and experimentation. What was that voyage like for you to end up with the Jim Mack blend?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Matt. Like we didn't go down the route of getting our own master distiller involved with Jim Mack yet. It's something we're going to do in the new year. So we really relied on the collaboration we had with the distillery used in West Cork. They were brilliant down there. Deirdre and John down there were very good to work with. We took away a lot of samples. We went back to numerous tastings. They were very good to us. We wanted Jim, obviously, lucky enough, Jim was there to taste the whiskey, and he chose it. Jim himself, and they could do with the plug, but Jemison was his tipple, and he really enjoyed Jameson. So we wanted something very smooth, but we wanted to add a bit more mouthfeel to it. And as I said, dealing with the guys in Cork was a great experience. But again, a daunting one, I suppose, when you're getting into an industry like this, Matt, as you well know, the money that's needed to get you up and running. So we've had great support from local enterprise, and we're self-funded so far to this. So we've got to a stage now where we feel like the brand itself and the brand will get the first sale, but the whiskey will get people coming back. And we've had great feedback from people on the whiskey. As I said, the brand itself has resonated with a lot of people. So we've had a lot of new people taking on the whiskey and trying it, which is great too. But again, we really want the dedicated whiskey drinker to take a chance on it, because I don't think there's going to be disappointed. And judged by your comments here, it's great to see so many people enjoying it there now.
Absolutely. So we're tasting it's 40% blend, a fantastic first look into the brand internationally, because obviously in Ireland and you can get it on Irish malts and other retailers as well. Then internationally, where, I suppose, is it available, or where is it going? What are the kind of the target markets you're looking at? Yeah,
well, at the moment, Matt, we just signed up with an importer in China. So we're looking forward to getting out there in the new year. We have some very interesting things we want to do in North America, and some very interesting stories to do with the whole hurling aspect and the origin stories of different sports. So we have some very cool things we want to do over there with that. So as I said, that takes a bit of money. So we'll be doing that hopefully in the middle of next year. With the whiskey itself, we wanted people to actually trust the brand and trust our first release. So then we plan to bring out some different cask finishes in the future when we have our master distiller on board. We have some interesting things we want to do in the RTD and the can with Jim Mack whiskey. So we have some exciting things we want to do, mainly going to North America and China for the moment. We're putting all our efforts into that for the moment. But as we build out the team, which we're doing at the moment, we will definitely be looking at other markets closer to home.
Absolutely. I think people maybe have a misconception about how easy it is to set up a brand and sell. You mentioned selling in China, selling in North America. I'm sure you'll be able to just. It doesn't happen overnight. No. These establishments. So for you, I suppose what has the experience been introducing your brand, perhaps, to importers or distributors in, say, North America, probably be a more familiar market for most people watching?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, Matt, and I suppose you understand this better than anyone, but we were due to launch March 12 months ago, and obviously with everything that happened with COVID, we didn't. Now, I had my first child as well in March last year, so the two things would have been carnage around the place, so we're kind of lucky in a way. So we ended up launching in December. Now, we took a chance. A lot of people told us probably to hold off until COVID was finished, but as we see, we don't know when that's going to be. So we're happy we launched. We were lucky that the All-Ireland final, I suppose, landed on the 13th of December for the first time ever, and it's probably going to be the busiest gifting season on record. So we took a chance to launch, especially with the connection we have to the GEA, and we ended up, which was great. We were number one selling whiskey for Irish malts online at Christmas, and another well-known platform I won't mention here tonight, the main platform in Ireland, out of respect to John. But so we're looking forward. We wanted to go to the States, but being able to travel, we hope to travel in January, which we weren't able. And this is all great doing tastings, but I'm looking forward to meeting people face to face. But I think when you're trying to get an emotional story across, an emotional connection for someone with a brand, with an importer or distributor, I think you can only sit down in front of them. And we've had some interesting conversations with a couple over in the States that are really interested in taking it on. But the more you learn in this industry, Matt, and the more you learn, as you said, route to market is key, and relationships are number one. And it's very hard to build those relationships unless you're doing it in person. So we're really looking forward to getting on a plane now soon after Christmas and sitting down with some of the guys we've been talking to that are very interested in taking it on board. But as you said, it's not easy. It's been made less easy with COVID, but looking forward to the whole thing opening up in the new year.
Absolutely. And how well has the story of hurling translated as a key part of the story?
Yeah, no, obviously here in Ireland, it's resonated because for obvious reasons. But again, we have 30 million diaspora in the States who will be very interested, and it does get a lot of coverage over there. So we have a lot of the Irish bars the guys we know over there are big into their GAA, big into hurling. So look, it's an added part of we're going to use to try and get in places. But the story, I think, with the Americans, especially in North America with Canadians as well, they really love to talk about it, love the sport. But again, there's connections there with the diaspora that went away, with origins of other sports, and we're really going to play on that when we get over there. And the character Jim Mack, again, the comic book style, that's one of the reasons we went down the route of the comic book style, is to be able to tell that story in a really cool way. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with people in the new year.
Absolutely fantastic. I suppose as people follow the Jim Mack story, where should they be looking, I suppose, online, the social media pages, a website?
Yeah, we have a website at jimmackwhiskey.com, very simple, and also on Instagram and on Twitter at Jim Mack Whiskey. We have some exciting people joining the team in the next month or so. We're just getting things over the line. I was hoping to be able to announce something tonight, but you'll see in the next few weeks someone very exciting joining the team that will bring a lot of experience and knowledge, and especially how to the route to market in the States. So look, we're really looking forward to that. And if people keep in touch, they can see what we're doing on Instagram and on our website.
Well, I'm delighted to say that the comment section tonight is full of people very much enjoying this, and I, for one, I am thrilled with this flavor profile in the nose as well. A lot of people saying they're going to add it to their drinking collection of Irish whiskey, and that's what you want to see. The Irish whiskey is made for drinking. So it's all nice to have a bottle sold, John. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah,
you sell one bottle, but if it doesn't get open, it doesn't help you sell any more bottles. So it's always great to see them open and shared. And as I always say, Irish whiskey goes best with friends, no matter what food you have.
No, and do you know what, Matt? That's 100%. And I suppose the connection with the pub and hurling was always had a connection, good or bad. But back in the day, it was an integral part of the community and what it was. And again, we feel that this is all to do with friends, and we want friends to be enjoying this together back in the pub as soon as possible.
Absolutely. I see one of the last comments here, Mike D dropping in saying sale of alcohol in the States is awkward as a state by state. Even US whiskeys find it hard to get distribution. I always try to explain to people who don't, I suppose, work in the industry. Imagine the US like Europe in terms of trying to sell alcohol. Because if I get it into Germany, it doesn't mean I'm going to be able to sell it in France. Just because it's in Pennsylvania most certainly doesn't mean I'm going to be able to sell it in New Jersey. And actually, if anyone works in export sales, that's a really important point, but don't worry about that. That's rabbit holes we don't need to go down. Roisin Carroll wants to know, what is the price point if we're looking at Irish malts this evening?
Yes, so $49.95, and it comes in the gift tube. Obviously there you see the gift tube, so it comes in that. All bottles come in that on Irish malts.
Exactly. And do not forget, guys, if you are subscribers to 3 Drams and you are enjoying this fantastic tasting pack this evening, you will get an email before the end of the show that not only gives you a discount code for the Jim Mack whiskey, but also you will get a bundle deal at the end if you want to get 2 of the 3 whiskeys this evening, because one of our whiskeys is a sneak peek of a pre-launch whiskey. So not only will you be able to purchase it and ship it directly to your door, you'll even get a discount. And for John, it doesn't even hurt your pocket. It's fantastic. This is a wonderful deal. This is great for everybody. Before we go, John Murphy wants to know, do you have any suggested foods you would eat with a dram? I mean, always a great question. Food and whiskey pairings are always great. Any suggestions with Jim Mack?
Yeah, but see, with me now, John and Matt, it's chocolate. So I always have chocolate with it. If you can categorize that as a food, it's definitely something I enjoy with it. Yeah, chocolate, any kind of chocolate, dark chocolate is lovely with it. Fantastic.
John, thank you so much for your time. As we always say, feel free to hang out in the green room in the background. We've been delighted to have you on. I have thoroughly enjoyed this Tashcon. You've seen in the comment section, everyone's enjoying it. Check it out on Irish Malt. You're going to get the discount code. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for introducing Jim Mack Whiskey.
Lovely to meet you, Matt. Talk soon.
Thanks very much. So I am delighted. Now we're going on to dram number 2. And I am so excited because we have a returning guest to the show, Mr. Robert Caldwell, Global Brand Ambassador for Teeling Irish Whiskey. How are you doing? You're welcome back to the show. You're a friend of the show, friend of Pot Still, friend of 3 Drams. Everyone it knows this ecstatic Australian personality, and you're here with. I've said this to you before. Teeling probably have the most whiskey releases in the world of any Irish whiskey, and yet you still sell out every time. So you got to be doing something right. Yeah, I think you guys had a meeting internally recently, wondering, are we releasing too many things? No is the answer. We want to see hundreds more releases from Teeling, because it is one of the most shit hot cool Irish whiskey brands. Back from 2015 was the launch of the first Teeling brand. I actually think I might be wrong. I remember selling Teeling whiskey in the original TWC format in a bar in Vancouver in 2014. So I think I've aged myself incorrectly. It might be the distillery.
Yeah, no, you are right. The brand was established by Jack and Stephen Teeling in 2012, but the distillery, the Newmarket Distillery, the first new distillery in Dublin in 125 years, was built in 2015. So we started producing our own whiskey in 2015, which is, brings up a good point. We are beginning that transitional process of moving towards a Dublin distillate and integrating a Dublin distillate into our portfolio, which is exciting. It is really exciting to see, what's coming out of the distillery and how we can evolve the categories of Irish whiskey in some small way. But yeah, thank you for your very, very kind words. You're bringing up those TWC bottles. It reminds me, I was a big fan of Teeling before I even worked for the brand, and I remember doing a couple of shifts. I was one of the first bartenders to ever work in the distillery in 2015, and the lads paid me with one of those old 21-year-olds that signed. It's still in my collection, but yeah, they paid me in whiskey. More than happy to receive, but I think I worked out a bit better in that deal in the long run.
Well, I'm glad to hear you were a fan before the day, and look at where you come from, a seasoned bartender to global whiskey brand ambassador. So I'm glad to have you. If anyone doesn't know you, you are your friend of the show, a lovely Australian drawl in the Irish whiskey world. I am going to invite everyone who has a pack with them. This is dram number 2, Iragall, right here. I'm going to start pouring this into my glass, but this is a 13-year-old Teeling single grain whiskey, a new release from the distillery. It is something that I have been dying to try. Again, like Jim Mack a moment ago, my first foray into this bottle. So I am delighted. Tell us all about it. What are we going to be imbibing upon this evening, Rob?
Of course, yeah, I'd love to. Thanks. So this is our Teeling single grain. It's a 13-year-old. Thank you, Maurice. I'm happy to be back. So this is a 13-year-old single grain. So you may be familiar. Let's just take a step back, but please don't wait on ceremony. Jump in, start nosing the whiskey, tasting the whiskey. But let's take you back in time to this product. So this product is our core single grain. It won World's Best Single Grain in 2013. So it always has been our best foot forward at an approachable price point in the single grain category. We like the single grain category, but like you said, we've done a lot of innovations across the ranges of whiskey, releasing single pot still and a various selection of blends influenced by many, many different casks. Some outrageously good single malts. We won World's Best Single Malt, which is a great coup. But yeah, we do have a few internal meetings. Like you said, your knowledge is pretty good behind the scenes, as we all know. We do have some internal meetings, and I remember having a meeting about this one, and the question was asked, do we release a single grain? I'm 100% all for it. I mean, this core single grain, this one here, always been one of my favorite go-tos. If you remember me traveling, which we used to be able to do, very normally you'd see me with a glass of single grain and a beer in hand for a couple of reasons. One, it's very tasty, and two, people can't, sneak up on you with a shot of overproof rum or something crazy like that. So always tactically.
You're not going to get a Fernet shot or something by
exactly,
accident. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're very, very proud now to release, the big brother, the older cousin of our core single grain. It's a 13-year-old vintage single malt. So you're talking 9 years in ex-bourbon casks and 4 years in ex-Bordeaux casks. Why that is important is if you look back at our core single grain, we were talking about a single grain. Both of these very, very similar in mash bill, 95% corn, 5% malted barley, column distilled. And then the core single grain goes into Californian Cabernet Sauvignon red wine casks. Two Swedes definitely know what they're talking about there. So we didn't go too far away from of what we know and what we know best. We have been guilty in the past of going weird and wonderful and excited to find out what akavit or gin or rye does to Irish whiskey, but for Amberana. But for this one, keep it close to home. So the subtle differences, and I think for me, being able to taste them side by side, it really showcases the impact a minimal cask variance can have on Irish grain whiskey. You're talking red wine from Bordeaux and red wine versus from Napa Valley. So New World versus Old World, minerality versus fruity, and it's breathtaking the differences that such a small impact can have. So let's crack into this. I've talked for too long, and I want to drink some of this whiskey.
On chat.
Cheers, Matt. So this one, like the other, is non-chill filtered. So if you're game, put a little finger in and rub it in and feel that texture, those natural fats, those retention, that retention of natural fats that we find with non-chill filtration. It's gonna be a lovely viscous textured experience. Raising the ABV ever so slightly from our core 46. This whiskey's at 50% ABV, a little bit bulkier, a little bit more impactful, but I still think, and I guess it's indicative of grain whiskey, it is still quite on the delicate side of things. A lot of the tannic quality, but like I said, the fruity nature of our core single grain, a lot of rich, ripe red fruits alongside the vanilla, butterscotch, toffee, and caramel you would get with that style of a corn forward distillate, very structurally similar to American bourbon. With this one, however, you drop off that red fruits, that fruitiness, and you trade out for minerality, earthy, tannic minerality of a Bordeaux red wine. So I think it's like chalk and cheese, but you're still talking red wine influenced single grain. So you can imagine it always kind of makes me think of the bright future of Irish whiskey when we start to think about all the different seasoned casks out there, all the different impacts that we can have, all the different mash bills and yeast strains. And that's why I love working with Teeling whiskies, because like you said, we're not shy to play in those different fields.
Absolutely. And I suppose when you come to, as you mentioned a moment ago, you're usually pre-pandemic or sans pandemic on the road. In terms of the global whiskey market, are there peaks and troughs of the enthusiasm and the popularity of single grain? Does the US swing more towards and Europe swing more away? Or is there a growing, love across the board on all markets for the single grains?
I think, like many things, it comes down to the education. You tell them the piece of it. Like my kind of go-to, and it didn't just come like that. It's not natural, but over years and years of going to the US, you kind of like realize that they like bourbon. Obviously, it's massive there. It's their national spirit. So you start to talk about single grain in that realm. Structurally similar to American whiskey, there is a lot of commonality there. I think the term single grain in and of itself, still to this day, my question is, what do you think that means? 9 times out of 10, people are going to say, oh, does that mean one type of grain? And that comes back to education. It's got nothing to do with the flavor profile of single grain or anything like that. It's down to the education of, I don't understand what single grain is. So it's up to people like myself, yourself, to share that information and show them, what is single grain through taste, and whiskeys like this certainly go a long way to bringing people around to trying other single grain whiskeys and realizing, oh, okay, I get what's going on here. I understand this flavor profile. It is different to a blended Irish whiskey. It is different to an Irish single malt. It's vastly different to a Scottish peated whiskey. So maybe I found my niche within European whiskeys.
Absolutely. So do you think that there's preconceived notions or prejudice, or, because to jump on what you said, I find in my professional life, the US is very open to it's very much they don't care about the category or the what's on the label. They just love if it tastes good, and that's one of the things I love. The US consumer is often described as very enthusiastic, and it's a particular favorite description of mine. They don't care what's on the label. Today they're drinking a single malt, tomorrow it's a bourbon, today the next day it's a single grain. In my personal opinion, I find that there's sometimes in established European whiskey markets, sometimes an aversion to the word single grain. And I don't know if that's a layover from other industries or if maybe that's more of an older consumer in terms of not actually older, but an old head of perhaps a person who's been drinking the same drink for the last 30 years and has preconceived notions. And I'm loving to see, I think in Irish whiskey and particularly obviously in the Teeling portfolio, a great resurgence of grain coming through in delicious profile, because as people are attesting to in the comments, this is going down a treat, particularly at 50%.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. No, addressing your comments, yeah, I mean, there are certain kind of certain things that have kind of stuck with us from old school whiskey marketing, that idea that older whiskey's better, or that negative connotation around the word blend, which probably then translates into what you're talking about, single grain. But I think nowadays the proof is in the pudding. I mean, you could put this blind up at anyone and they're going to say, that is fantastic. What is that? And it completely jars their perspective around this. So I think people are coming in less with those negative connotations and more open, like you said, in the American market, more open to just trying it and going, this is fantastic. Now tell me about it. So I think the biggest wins I've had at a whiskey show, when we do have the remarkable various range of whiskeys that we have on offer, it's not just pouring the best, it's not just pouring the oldest or the most expensive, it's asking the question, what kind of whiskeys do you like? Because if they're coming up a Lafroig fan, a Talisker fan, an Ardbeg fan, I'm not going to give them a single grain. I'm going to go to Black Pits first and win them over that way. So it's about just asking that one question. All right, what can I hook them with? How do I get 5 more minutes of their time to explain exactly what a single grain is or single pot still is? So that preamble is key to finding, okay, what kind of whiskey do they like? Without the preconceived notions, find something that's tasty. You find something that's tasty, they'll listen to you for 10 times longer than they ever would if they don't immediately like that first sip.
Absolutely. You're listening to here, guys. This is whiskey ambassadoring 101 right here. So if people are enjoying this, Three Drams is a fantastic platform that it very much is spread out across the world. A lot of continental Europe, as far away as Australia, Canada, Japan. There's a few famous astronauts that join in as well, which is one of my favorite things. But if people around the world are looking for this and perhaps, Irish malts will deliver pretty much to your door anywhere around the world, but sometimes they can't. Are there particular markets where people will find Teeling 13-year-old in their local stores?
Yeah, we've gone relatively small scale for this one. There's, like you said, there's a lot out there. It hasn't gone to the US. I know we were talking a lot about the US, but it hasn't gone to the US. We are focusing on Ireland, where we understand, the Irish single grain a little bit, probably more here, just through, tons of offerings, and a little across Europe as we start to get, Benelux, France, Germany. We obviously, quite popular there. We were quite lucky there to receive quite a high accolade recently. So we're starting to get a little bit more recognition for some of our more weird and wonderful releases, like the single grain. But for the time being, yeah, definitely check out Three Drams and Irish malts and a few other Irish retailers if you want to pick it up across Europe. And then hopefully it will be as successful as we think it's going to be. We'll have a great Christmas, and then we can extend the line a little bit longer.
Absolutely. There's a few questions coming in. Of course, Teeling doesn't have a column still in Newmarket Square, so not producing grain whiskey as a part of the distillery, which is a few people have asked that. But will this become a core part of the range, or is this a limited release? I suppose is one of the most popular questions coming through.
It's not a limited release, like in that we only have 9,000 bottles, like the Renaissance or anything like that, or the other series that we do. There is scope to scale up to address the questions of people that we don't have column stills in Dublin. Yeah, No, we don't. We have 3 pot stills named Alison, Natalie, and Rebecca. We also have, access to John Teeling's Great Northern Distillery, a fabulous distillery that produces breathtaking column distilled grain that we consider family stock. So yeah, I mean, when we talk about the integration of a Dublin distillate, we talk about family stock. We're not just talking about the pot still whiskey from Dublin. We're talking about the grain whiskey that we bring in from GND, and that this is part of that. We don't hide that fact, nor do we lead out with it because it confuses regular consumers. We're going to focus on flavor first. But if there's questions, yeah, sure, we'll happily answer that. But yeah, we're very excited to move towards a Dublin distillate. We've changed our bottling to signify that. If you look at our small batch bottle now, it has the embossed phoenix on the back and the embossed Teeling whiskey down the bottom there. Even the logo has changed to Reborn 2012 either side of our phoenix. This symbolizes that the stock in those bottles has moved towards a Dublin distillate. For those that know the history of the Teeling whiskey family, the Teeling family have been distilling in Ireland since the 1980s. For a while there at 2 previous distilleries, but now moved towards the Newmarket distillery.
Fantastic. I think that's what you call vertical integration.
There you go. That's why you're paid more than me.
There you go. I see Robert. One of our viewers, Robert, is asking if I have any dog tonight. If anyone who's watched this before, you usually get interrupted by some point. I do have a border collie called Indy, who is currently passed out on her little bed in the corner. So no dog right now. I do see John McCarthy coming in and saying family stock is Mr. John, true to the meaning of legend Teeling. So I'm loving. I think people are enjoying that vertical integration as I mentioned, because there's certainly Teeling is a very well known name, and I think a very interesting name in the world of Irish whiskey. The world of whiskey festivals and travel and whatnot for brand ambassadors and sales ambassadors is, I suppose, slowly reopening. Will people in the continent start seeing perhaps Teeling representatives with an Irish brogue start reintroducing themselves to festivals? I don't mean that in the sense of you.
I was going to say, Will anyone that's not you start traveling again?
That's not what I meant. I meant not local sales distribution teams is more what I meant than not you, Rob. Look, I think the compliment there is I've already forgotten you're Australian. You're just one of us at this point.
Yeah, begrudgingly adopted Irish.
Exactly.
No, we are traveling again. Luckily, we've got a great team around me. So the global brand ambassador, Chris Hayes, is our European brand ambassador, and James Kilgannon is our distillery brand ambassador. So they travel just as much as I do, perhaps more, especially now. I'm tentative about getting back out there. I've got a couple of good ones booked in Amsterdam, which is a perfect serve bar show, and at the end of the week is Den Haag Whiskey Fest. Chris has already been on 2 trips to Germany, 3 trips: Germany, France, and Belgium. James is going to head up to Scandinavia soon. I think Chris has still got Switzerland by the end of the year. So yeah, we are starting to roll back to the way things used to be, getting out and meeting people and getting to taste with the whiskey with them in person. These have been fun. They've been making the best of a bad scenario, and people like yourself and the guys at Irish Malts have done remarkably well at keeping people, together and fostering that sense of community within the whiskey industry, which has been brilliant. We've had a little bit of success in that field as well. So it's been great, but I think a lot of us looking forward to getting back out and meeting people and sharing a whiskey in person again soon. So hopefully we can see a lot more of that come 2022.
Absolutely. So if you have a distillery ambassador and you have a European ambassador, and I'm sure you have American ambassadors as well, what do you do, Rob?
Supervise, right? Supervise.
Look busy.
Look busy. Shh, cut this out. Can we edit
exactly.
This?
the Teeling brothers are watching. No. That's fantastic to hear, because, of course, I believe you're referencing, of course, Whiskey Fest Den Haag, one of the largest whiskey shows, I suppose, in the Benelux regions, and of course in the Netherlands is coming up in the 19th to the 22nd of November. That is one of my favorite shows of the year, and also one of the shows where it's over 5 sessions, 3 days, and about 9 million Teeling tweed hats is the reminiscent thing of every show I go to. And it's very funny from an Irish perspective being in that festival, because Whiskey Schiff in Switzerland, which you also mentioned, Chris will be going to as well. Not so many hats. I don't know, maybe he just can't fit them in the suitcase. But Den Haag is one of my favorite things, because from 9 a.m. open, there's Teeling hats. And then there becomes a point where the Teeling hats are gone at a certain point, and people just start coming to any Irish stand asking for Teeling hats. So there's a paddy stand every year. People just wondering to the paddy stand of Teeling hats. There's other stands of different Irish whiskies that are there, and people just looking for tweed hats. So obviously the branding department has done a very good job at least Den Haag. If not, we need to stack Chris up with some for Whiskey Schiff in Zurich.
I might hide some in his bag.
Exactly, but fantastic to see that we're going out on the road again and seeing Teeling across Europe, and then of course further afield, because I know you do have ambassadors down in Australia and looking after the Philippines and also the United States and of course further afield. If people are going to go and look at Irish malts this evening, I suppose in general times, because you're going to get the discount at the end of the show. Never forget about the discount. John O'Donovan and Robert O'Donovan, the guys behind Irish Malts, are going to treat you at the end of the show, if you're a subscriber, to discounts. But don't worry about that. Normally, how much will that bottle set you back?
I believe it's $84.95 on irishmalts.com. Is that pre-discount or post-discount? But that sounds,
I don't know,
very, very good.
No, that could have been a thing that either of us could have looked up, and we didn't. So what we're discovering here is Rob doesn't actually have a territory to go to, and I didn't look up the price. So wonderfully, and John O'Donovan will tell you the price in the discount email. So that's what we need to know. Robert, I absolutely love having you on the show every time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And if people are trying to find, everyone pretty much knows where to find Teeling whiskey these days. But if they're trying to find Rob Caldwell online for Teeling Global Whiskey Brand Ambassador, where would they find you online?
Oh, man. You're throwing me in the deep end here. I never changed my Instagram.
You're never prepared for this. This is always my last question to you. You never know your own social media handles.
No, I know it. I just didn't. I never changed it, so it doesn't have Teeling whiskey in the title, because I thought, there is years of being a Teeling fanboy before I ever started working for Teeling. So I was like, you know what? I'll keep it, and then it just stuck. So yeah, I'm on Instagram. It's at nameless NAEMLESS. What that means, but let's just say it means putting the brand forward and not me. That's what it means now.
That was good to come up with on the fly. Yeah,
sure.
and don't forget, guys, regardless of Rob not knowing his own social media handles, you will be able to get a discount for this fantastic single grain, because I thoroughly enjoyed this at the end of the show. Again, you get a discount for the bottle, but if you buy it as a bundle with the Gimnack whiskey, you get even a steeper discount as well, courtesy of the guys at Irish Malts and 3 Drams, which of course the O'Donovan brothers, the two guys running an absolutely amazing show and spreading Irish whiskey around the world. Exactly. There you go. Rob, thank you so much. I very much appreciated your time. And as I said, always feel free to watch in the green room.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks. So I am delighted, after such a raucous laughter that we've had with Robert Caldwell. We've gone from Eastern Australia all the way over to Western Ireland. I am delighted to be joined by Pádraic from Micil Irish Whiskey, showcasing a sneak peek, Pádraic, of the small batch blended Irish whiskey from Micil, the first Irish whiskey release from the famed Putching Distillery in the west of Ireland. Welcome to the show, Pádraic.
Thanks a million, Matt. How are you keeping? Good to see you again.
Exactly. Good to see. Actually, the last time I saw you, the two of us, Larith Squailga, Kainta Squelga on a podcast. So it's delighted to see you face to face. I can finally show people your face.
Yeah, no, tá sé ítach bheith caiint le ríist agus béidir go couple focal gailgeag daoine freisin.
Exactly. I know. So where you're coming from the distillery, I can see that behind you.
Yeah, this is the office. I chose actually. I was actually going to take the call out in the kind of tasting area, but there was quite a bit of noise still going on. Jimmy, the head distiller, he was just preparing stuff for tomorrow, so pumps and everything going. I just thought it might be a bit of interference there with our sound.
Oh well, very kind. He's a head distiller, but close family member as well, isn't that right?
Absolutely, he's my younger brother. So.
So quite the family enterprise, because of course, Micil being I believe 6th generation poaching distiller in the west of Ireland, the first with the license, as far as I understand. But fantastic to see such a tight knit, I suppose, Irish language business making waves in the world. We've known you, and if anyone follows Pot Distilled, I'm a huge fan of the poaching bottles. From the beginning, you've now got a number of gins out as well. And here we are at the first look at a small batch Irish whiskey release. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, look, first of all, thanks a million for getting everything right there in terms of how many generations we've been distilling for. Our reception is still okay there. Are we still?
You're dropping a little bit in and out, but you should be okay. Yeah. I'm fearing we may have lost Pádraic a little bit there. If anyone who is watching in the comments section wants to let us know whether or not it's just on my end or altogether, my
I can see and hear you there again, Matt. So I don't know if it's all good again.
Oh yeah, August Reach.
So look, so hopefully we won't have any other breaks in the connection. But I was just saying, fair play for getting the number of generations correct. So my brother and I, we are 6th generation distillers, and as you were saying there, Micil is our great grandfather. So it's there's a direct family lineage there, right from his time up into ourselves. And rightly so as well. We are the first generation to be distilling legally. So Micil obviously set up in 2016 in Galway. So it ended quite a long drought in Galway of no legitimate distilling anyway. The last whiskey distillery closed in 1911. So it's a very proud moment for us to open. And look, it was always the plan to lay down whiskey here. And, we started laying down our own whiskey there late last year. And look, I suppose even today in the Irish language, we still refer to poteen as fuisce. So if you go to Connemara, if you go to other Gaeltachts around the country, you talk to them about fuisce, they may well think that you're actually talking about poteen. So obviously the two things were only separated by the buying of a license historically. So look, I suppose we're continuing really on that tradition, and so many shared traditions between the two spirits. Obviously, poteen became illegal because of taxes. Whiskey, obviously became the legitimate form of the distillate. By the way they actually differentiate between legal and non-tax paid whiskey back then was they would call the tax paid stuff Parliament, and the other stuff they would just call whiskey. So or fuisce. So anyway, we're in essence continuing the same tradition, and so this is an independent bottling what we're going to be tasting. But before we ever made an independent bottling, we wanted to actually thanks a million, Alan. We wanted to first of all lay down our own whiskey. So thankfully we laid down some Irish whiskey there last year. We've been distilling whiskey ever since, and recently we started or launched, I should say, a cask ownership offering. Griallais, it's fine to. So basically, we do have our cask ownership offering, which is all our own whiskey, which is going into that at the moment. And for the independent bottling, this was a way for us to, I suppose, showcase what we want to achieve with our own whiskies that we're laying down, and full transparency there as well. We wanted to be very transparent as well about what we're doing. So in other words, we're not pretending like this is laid down in house. We're very happy and very proud of the fact that it's sourced whiskey from Great Northern Distillery. And then in terms of the finishing, we're buying and selecting our own casks. And I'll tell you about the casks shortly and about the distillate and the components and everything. But hopefully that gives a little flavor, at least in terms of what was inspiring us, and that this was always a part of the plan.
Well, fantastic. Can I interject here now, because one thing
Sure.
I want to do is I want to invite people to throw the nose into the glass and take a little sip of the glass as well. But before we deep dive into the whiskey itself, there's a lot of people on here, particularly from the continent, who may not have been able to get to Ireland in the last 18 months, 2 years, that don't know Micil Distillery. I can only express in terms of true romanticism of Irish whiskey. Can you paint a picture? How many stills? The size of the distillery? Where is it located? Obviously, it's yourself and your brother. Obviously, if you're in the distillery, I must say you're a very well dressed man. Every time I've met you, you've left your brother to be mucking out the mash tun. So very, very cleverly, you can't have the Louis Vuitton in the mash tun. But I'm only slagging you now. But paint us a picture, because it is truly a hands-on, very true romantic idea of an Irish whiskey, or it puts you in distillery.
Yeah, look, I suppose we are a small distillery. Slánta, we'll talk you through the whiskey shortly now. I have a drop here, and just a little proverb, ní tuisce doch na scéal. Basically, the story doesn't come before a drink, so it's appropriate what you're saying, Matt, to taking a sip. So yeah, we are a small distillery, but we are cast strength. We are going to we're planning on building a new distillery there as well. I'll maybe we'll get to talk about that for a moment as well. But we're the only operating distillery in Galway City and County, so there is no other operating distillery here. We have a copper pot still, so it's a 500-litre copper pot still. So just to give a perspective in terms of how small that actually is, at the moment we're laying down 4 50-litre casks of whiskey per week. So all of our whiskey distillate from the distillery is double distilled. So basically we do a low wines run, then we do a spirit run on a Friday. And when I say we, I'm just talking collectively about Micil Distillery. Jimmy down there is, doing the hard work there. And he is an assistant there with him, Sean, as well. So,
you couldn't have got more Irish names down in the still house anyway.
No, you couldn't. All right, yeah. And look, we're just really delighted actually with the spirit that's being laid down. Obviously, we produce 2 poutines here as well. We're producing 2 gins. We recently launched a gin in the UK only for the moment. Craft Gin Club, they basically bought 110,000 bottles of our new spiced orange gin from us, and that
nothing wrong with that. 110,000 bottle order.
It was a lot of work, putting it all together. But because of the success actually of that varietal, we're actually going to keep it as a part of our core range. So it's been extremely well received. So people outside of the UK will be able to get it there from the month of November, and obviously you'll be able to get it there on Irish malts. If you want.
A fantastic plug, of course.
Absolutely. I know you look really important, to give a shout out to the lads there. But so that's, I hope that kind of paints a picture. So we're just about 100 meters there from the Wild Atlantic Way. So literally you can smell the sea air from here, and just on the doorstep of Galway City. So people who are visiting Galway City, they should definitely book a tour with us and see what it's all about.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this now. I went into Micil the first time to interview you. We didn't know each other. I'd never tasted. Celtic whiskey had given me the spirit once to taste. I left with multiple bottles under my arm. I went straight to Cork afterwards to see the guys in the Shelburne bar and do some interviews down there. And I was drinking Micil all across Cork. Every bar in Cork I went to had it. I was having a weekend on Micil Puchin. It was fantastic. I've had multiple bottles here. I've killed every single one. I'm only delighted to see the whiskey, but of course, you're going to see evolutions of the core flavors of Micil. And if you do not have a bottle of Micil Puchin, get on to Irish Malts. It's no discount because we're not talking about Puchin tonight. I'm just getting excited about things that are off topic. You need to get yourself a bottle and know what this is going to taste like. But of course, talk us through this whiskey and why it tastes like it does and how you came about the actual, I suppose, the blend that we are tasting at the moment.
Yeah, so it is a blend. It's part of two. We're going to be releasing two independent bottlings, and this one focuses on our Connemara tradition. So essentially, if you look at Galway City and you look at Connemara, there were two sort of distinct traditions. So Connemara whisky makers, they didn't stop while distilling started there. So distilling stopped in Galway in 1911, basically. That's when the last distillery stopped. So between 1911 and 2016, the whisky makers or the putting makers from Connemara, they were, still continuing this distilling tradition in small pot stills. And it's no secret either that they used smaller casks to put their spirit into. Now, in putting making or that early whisky making, this wasn't really to age the spirit; it was more to move it around, to hide it, etc. So it was a very practical reason for that. And then in Galway City, you had this wonderful tradition as well of pot still whiskey, a lot of triple distillation going on there around the city. And you go back to the Connemara traditions there as well. If you think about the distillers, they were doing everything from scratch. They were malting their own cereals. So one of the key things, I suppose, for us is that, a lot of our whiskey is going to be peated. So there's a peated component here in this whiskey. And it's also influenced by some smaller casks and I suppose some recharged casks. But we'll get into that in a second. So people might be wondering, why did you go for the smaller casks? So there's a tradition, like I said, in Connemara, but also in Galway City, to name one distillery was nicknamed the Quarter Barrel Distillery. And the reason it had that nickname is because it sold their whiskies by the quarter barrel. Okay, so everything we're doing is related to either what we did in terms of whisky in Connemara or what we did or what the Galway whiskey distilleries would have done in the past. So we're marrying those two traditions, if you like. So in terms of the whiskey components, there's two different grain components. The first one is aged in ex-bourbon barrels, so quite a good color. I'll talk you through the cask components now in a second as well. But so ex-bourbon aged grain whiskey. We also have some virgin oak whiskey aged grain whiskey there as well. Okay, so much more vanilla focused, great color, wonderful kind of wood spice. And then you have single pot still, again, emphasizing those pot still notes. You got your, that pot still spice that's quite hard, for people to describe it. It has that, it's got that fruitiness and the spiciness and the texture that you get from your single pot still. You got your single malt component there as well. And last but certainly not least, then peated, triple distilled peated malt in there as well. And I'll talk you through actually some of the cask components there. So 5 components in total. So anyway, they're the kind of the spirit components. In terms of the casks that we're using there as well, again, emulating what was done, we wanted to introduce sort of more wood influence. So approximately half of the whiskey has been aged, so about 47.5% has been aged in ex-bourbon, resized, decharred and recharred. So again, emphasizing wood spices, wood smoke, and then you have PX, so Pedro Jimenez, and there's actually one little other cask there as well, which we've introduced. And of course, you've probably tried our heritage poteen, Matt, which is peated. And just to be kind of clear about it as well, the turf that's used to peat that malt is actually Connemara turf, right? And to the best of my knowledge, and open to correction on this, I believe that it's the only kind of I suppose spirit there that's using Irish turf, and well, sorry, maybe it's not, but it's using Irish turf anyway, and it's our own turf from our own family bogland there that we're cutting still and harvesting and all the rest of it. So anyway, the Heritage Poteen has spent some time in this unique cask, and it's a chestnut cask. Okay, so we're obviously allowed to do that with Irish whiskey, you know, to use woods that aren't oak. And so we've imparted, it's only a touch, but there's a little textural touch there of Connemara peat. So just curious to hear, I suppose, what people's feedback is on the spirit here. We're exceptionally pleased with it. We intended actually to lay it down to age it, or to finish it for 6 months, but we decided after 6 months, okay, we're actually going to need to give it a little bit more time, and we gave it another 2 months, and then we felt it had really reached the level that we wanted. So we're incredibly proud of it ourselves. So I suppose on the nose, get a nice little balance of peat. It's not the dominant you know, aroma there by any stretch, but it's certainly there. Lovely charred wood smoke, baked apples, baked pears, lots of vanilla. Honey sweetness, which you'll actually get from our poteen as well, funny enough, even though this is Great Northern Distillery Spirit. Bit of pink peppercorn. I saw some people commenting there with white peppercorn or white pepper, absolutely. And a little sip on the palate. Nice bit of smoky bacon there, smoked bacon, clovey spiciness. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you think of it yourself there, Matt, as well. But, you know, not right.
Sorry, apologies. What was that?
No, I was just saying in terms of, you know, the peatiness there, it's not overpowering.
No, absolutely. And there's there's the sweetness underneath. You've got on top, like you said, the kind of the smoky bacon element of the peat. And then there's a salinity in there as well, which I'm finding very interesting. So usually that is actually something I've never found in the G&D whiskies so far. So there's a very unique flavor there as well. And I'm seeing, I was pulling up some of the comments there while you were giving your flavor profiles, that there's a lot of people with a lot of very interesting flavor comments throughout the tasting, and of course invited people to start imbibing a few moments ago. So a lot of people enjoying this, and I suppose true to the character that you will be following on with, I presume, like as you're saying, that is the small cast, this piece. Obviously you've got the family boglands as well, so there's a very nice kind of continuation and first step into, I suppose, the Irish whiskey scene for what has to be the most famous Poteen distillery in the world at this point.
Well, we'd like to think we're doing our part anyway to promote the Poteen category, and to also bring it all back around as well to Fushke. But so possibly the best known Poteen distillery. So we certainly consider ourselves ambassadors for the category. And by the way, it's not just myself here or Jimmy or Sean. It has to be mentioned as well that Ross is my business partner there, and I'm sure you're very familiar with Mark McLaughlin, our in-house whiskey expert. So that's our current team at the moment, and we're hoping to be growing it very shortly as well, along with a new distillery.
Fantastic. I'm gonna ask you about the new distillery in one moment, if you can spare some details. The first thing is, what we're going to be seeing this is the world's first peek at this whiskey. It's not released yet. This will not be a part of your bundles or your discounts yet. When it is released, you will get an email direct to your inbox if you're a 3 Drams subscriber, letting you know that this is now available. Do you have an idea of when this might be ready for release, or what kind of recommended retail price it might feature at?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're within a number of weeks, basically, of having this on shelf and in there with Irish malts and 3 Drams. You're looking at a price point of €45. And so again, we've done our utmost to keep this, at a very reasonable price point. Now it's incredibly difficult, if you're doing independent bottling to actually, make ends meet. So anyway, this is us, working incredibly hard to achieve this.
I was going to say, you're saying it's hard to make ends meet. It's hard to get bottling time in Ireland. One of the most in demand things in the country. Warehouse space and bottling line time are some of the most difficult things to find in the country. So fantastic. I see Maurice is saying they're wondering will be in time for Christmas. I presume that kind of puts you in the timeline for Christmas. Fantastic. And of course, even if it is or is not in time for Christmas, you got to bundle it with the poutine. That's what I'm telling you. I'm telling you one thing to take away from tonight: get a bottle of poutine into your life. You won't regret it. So in terms of looking abroad, are there markets that you're going to be looking at outside of Ireland? Perhaps markets you're already in. How is, I suppose, the story of poutine being received or understood in non-traditional, I suppose, distilled white spirit markets that aren't? It's a white spirit, but it's a flavorsome white spirit, which I suppose puts you in an interesting place in the world.
Yeah, so in terms of markets, we're not in very many markets. We've been very focused domestically, simply, I suppose, because our team is so small. We're running a distillery with a very small team, no advertising or promotional budgets. But again, our ambition, we'll show that in a moment, I suppose, with the planned new distillery and stuff. But we're doing a little bit in the UK. We're doing a bit in Germany. But we do want to widen our reach there across Europe in some of the bigger whiskey markets. So again, we'll be going back there to Germany with our products right across the range, and also then the US will feature there as well, and we will of course be going further east as well, possibly into China once we I suppose align ourselves with the right partners. So very fortunate with the people we're dealing with at the moment, that we're dealing with, good people, and that's really important to us. We'd rather sell less with the right distributor than sell a lot, initially, and maybe not, what do you call it, having a long-term relationship there with the right partner. So poutine, it's being really well received. It's still in its infancy, really. But I think it certainly is building in terms of its reputation and in terms of people knowing something about it. So, but we're a while off yet. I mean, Irish whiskey, I think, is still something which we're still educating about. So, I think that's still something that needs to be worked on.
Exactly, and I'm glad you mentioned the East, because, of course, China, Korea, Japan, places where baijiu, shochu, and soju perhaps will lend themselves to the welcoming open arms of poutine being, I suppose, a recognizable in terms of a very flavorsome white spirit. I don't like using the term white spirit because people envisage vodka and gin, because there's nothing like that. We're not tasting poutine. I don't understand why I keep talking about poutine when we're tasting whiskey, but it's just a point I love about your distillery. So that's I'm delighted to talk about it.
Well, again, part of the reason, I suppose, why you're talking about them is, again, they're so interrelated. It's almost hard to separate them. But I suppose in terms of, we see a lot of people here into the visitor center from various nations across the world. And I have to say, generally speaking, they're really open to, the poutine category, and they really walk away from here knowing something new and loving the flavor of it. So very flavorsome, and that's exactly what we want to do with our whiskies as well. And just to mention, I know I haven't touched on it, but we are kind of talking the poutine category here as well as the whiskey. It'll be unfair not to mention a new product that's coming to market from us really soon. It's really unique. It's the world's first, and it's a poutine-based Irish cream liqueur. It's actually our grandmother's recipe, so that's one to watch. also going to be bottled, fingers crossed, over the next couple of weeks, and it will also be available there on Irish malts with an expected price point of about €29 there.
Very nice. And again, in time for Christmas?
Yes, well ahead of Christmas.
Fantastic. Always a great time. So look, we're well over time here, only mainly because I got far too excited talking about poutine. Tell us quickly about the distillery, then the expansion plans, and then we're going to need to wrap up because I've held everyone too long. I've given everyone 20 minutes and I've given everyone about 5 minutes too much. So we're way over time. So for everyone who's watching, fair play to you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. To guys in Irish malts, don't worry. We're keeping it on track. But I want to hear about Micil's expansion plans.
So yeah, we're planning to build a new distillery in South Connemara, and that is, I suppose, the original spiritual and every kind of home for Micil and ourselves. So it's one of the reasons, of course, why we speak Irish or Gaelic, and so we're very excited about that whole project. So it's still early days, but I suggest people keep an eye out on more news about that. But purpose-built whiskey distillery. Obviously, we'll be continuing to make our poutine, our gin, and our whiskies there. And so, yeah, we just want to create a bigger home. It's just about capacity. It's about having greater visibility and securing Micil Distillery's future, in terms of supplying new markets and everything like that. So it's a big stepping stone for us, and I'm very happy to say that we're working with Údarás na Gaeltachta on this particular project, and they're terribly excited about it as well, in terms of actually setting up a distillery in that location, and all the manufacturing and tourism jobs it's going to create, and the general good feeling it's going to create for the area.
Absolutely, and anyone who knows Údarás, always a fantastic thing to be involved in. But lest there be I don't think there'd be a more fitting business to be supported by Údarás. And I always joke that and tell people that the working language of your distillery is Irish. So it's definitely, if you're going to find a poster child for Údarás na Gaeltachta, it's certainly yourselves anyway. So I'm sure they're very happy with you, and best of luck with the developments in the distillery, and I hope that we'll be able to stay in touch and keep people apprised of all of the developments. But if people are going to find you online, where are you going to go? I hope you know your social media handles better than Robert did.
Absolutely. So it's nice and simple, at Micil Distillery. Robert is good, in fairness to him. But at Micil Distillery, that's both on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter there as well. So yeah, you can find us there, and if you're would love a follow. So we'd be very grateful for that. Our own website then, of course, is micildistillery.com. If you're booking a tour, coming to visit us, and feel free to reach out, folks. We love talking to people.
Exactly, and if you have no idea how to spell Micil, it's behind your head in one of the most fantastic pieces of branding I've seen in a while. So
thank you so much. One little thing, actually, just so that we've mentioned it on several occasions here, that the pronunciation, if you look inside the branding, once people pick up their bottles, they'll actually be able to see the little pronunciation guide inside the L of the Micil word.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Pádraic, thank you so much for your time tonight. Everyone, of course, in the comment section before you go, let us know what has been your favorite of the evening. Give us a ranking, because everyone's different. We love seeing the rank preference. If you're a 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, or a mixture of all those. A lot of people have given to us already, but we'd love to see them. Thank you so much. This has been, of course, a fantastic episode, guys, of 3 Drams. We are in episode 12, which is actually there's episode 12, but erroneously. So it's the 13th installment of 3 Drams. New branding is coming soon. There's Christmas gifting. What more could you want? The guys from Irish Malts are just trying to spread the good word of Irish whiskey, and you get a discount at the end of every episode. What more can you want? I say at the end of every episode. The discount was actually sent out about 20 minutes ago because it's automated. It hits 9 o'clock on the button. You get your discount. So go look at your emails. get the bundle, and don't forget that when Pádraic drops the new Micil Irish whiskey, you're going to get an email about it immediately. Fantastic. So Pádraic, to you, thank you. Robert, to you as well, thank you. And then, of course, John. John from Jim Mac, and then John and Robert O'Donovan from Irish Malts, of course. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, guys. Thank you so much.